Draw. Welcome to Untap Upkeep, a guide to casual Magic the Gathering. I'm Nick, and I love Molten Birth.
And I'm Jason, and I'm allergic to islands. And now it's time for today's flavor text of the day. Today's flavor text of the day comes from Journey into Nyx. It's called Cyclops of Eternal Fury.
The anger that festers inside this one is contagious. Anthusa of Setessa.
So today's topic is going to be common issues in playgroups. There's a lot of things that will come up in your playgroup that will make things less fun. Either a player will get angry, or decks will be built that will just cause chaos that you hate. And yeah.
There's definitely a lot of variance in how people like to play the game, how people like to build their decks, how people like to interact with other people. And so we'd like to talk to you about how to lessen disruptive behavior in your playgroup.
Exactly. And for that, we broke it down into 3 categories.
The first category on our list is behavior. One of the issues in playgroups is not necessarily linked to how they built their deck or how they communicate with their playgroup, but rather the behavioral reactions to, let's say, Jason playing Cyclonic Rift. Or, well, he would never do that because he doesn't play blue.
That's a terrible analogy.
But, you know, you get the point.
And one thing to watch out for in those situations is if a player gets really, really salty. Because sometimes that'll happen. You blow a player out with a huge board wipe, and they could get really, really angry.
Definitely happens a lot, especially when you're playing casual, because there are a lot of different varieties of decks that are allowed to be played, as opposed to where competitive or higher level power, maybe you don't see as many Voltron decks or as many combat decks. But if you have someone that just has a bajillion creatures, they're all really strong, and they just look at someone, they go, I don't like you, or oh, you're the threat, or some excuse, whatever it is, doesn't really matter, and just blow someone out, and then that person just scoops or stomps out, or, you know, gets really angry, or says, you know, some verbal remarks like, I hate you, or your stupid deck, you know, and carries that through. That bad mood pulls the whole playgroup down, and it's just not very fun for anyone. But that may be the issue of the person that did it, or it may be an issue of the person reacting. It depends.
And what I would recommend in that situation is if that happens and someone is angry, don't really try and get on their level and fight with them. It's best to just kind of let them be mad, they'll blow over, and then if this happens to be a recurring thing, maybe have you or another member of your playgroup talk to that person and try and help them be more calm during games to avoid angering the playgroup.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do have to confront a problem, and it makes for a healthier playgroup if you do, but also there's not always a good time to do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes someone just has to blow off their steam. Sometimes it's just that one game where, you know, everyone knows the pain of drawing 10 lands in a row and just sitting there and not playing. And I get that. I understand that it's not fun to not play Magic.
Magic is frustrating, sometimes very frustrating.
Yeah, and I definitely think that comes up. That will come up. It is a fun game. We play it for fun. But when you do have a player that just intentionally does salty action, salty behaviors, it can kind of pull you down a little bit. So definitely keep an eye out for that in your playgroup. Make sure that it doesn't drag everyone down. Another issue in the behavior category is people who feel like they have bragging rights. I don't personally have an issue with, let's say I saved up a ton of money and I bought myself a Gaia's Cradle, for example.
Good card.
Everyone knows, or everyone should know Gaia's Cradle. But if I play my Gaia's Cradle, I'm going to be proud of it. I'm going to probably make a comment about, this is the Gaia's Cradle that I saved up my 5 paychecks for, because it's really expensive now.
Really expensive.
But not everyone's down with that. People will take offense to that. People will go, well, I don't like that he's waving his most expensive cards in front of me, or his cards are more expensive, therefore they're more powerful, which isn't always true. Mm-hmm. But people will feel the way they're going to feel. You can't really change how someone feels. But what you can do is you can either A, change your own behavior Maybe if you notice someone's getting upset, maybe don't do it as much. Or B is, talk to them about it, because maybe Gaia's Cradle in your deck isn't really built optimally, because sometimes you build a deck with powerful cards like Tim.
Yeah, Tim does that a lot.
He's a player that's been playing for years. He's had cards back from the early 90s when Magic kind of started it up, and he plays with cards that are really, really expensive, but he doesn't optimize them. He just plays them because he has them. And that doesn't make me upset, but it'll make some people upset because they know they'll never ever be able to hold those cards in their hands.
And I think it has something to do with knowing your audience. Like, I'm a college student, I'm in debt, I can't afford a Gaia's Cradle. So if you're constantly shoving a Gaia's Cradle in my face about how you saved up all this money, I might get a little upset. However, if you're playing with grown adults who can make their own financial decisions and buy whatever Magic cards they want, that's probably a little different, and they probably won't care if you play a Gaia's Cradle and talk about it.
And in the reverse, if someone's bragging, oh, I beat your $600 deck with my $50 deck or something, it's just poor sportsmanship. You shouldn't have to do that. Unless, you know the person really well and you're just kind of poking fun at them and they're not going to get upset about it. But really, I think that the whole rule here is don't do things intentionally with the intent to hurt someone or to make them feel bad, because ultimately this is a game we all love. We don't want to make anyone fall out of love with a game that is something we bond over.
And I think knowing what's okay and not okay in terms of behavior kind of develops over time with how much you play with your play group.
Yeah, you definitely want to get to know your play group.
Sure. You'll get to know what pisses people off and what people think is just plain funny in your play group the more you play with them. So just play with your play group more.
Snow-covered swamp.
Oh, man.
And then the last thing in the behavior category is intentional unfun. If someone's playing cards not because they're good or because their deck is built to do it. For example, if you have a control deck, I expect you to play control cards. Counterspells, stacks pieces. If you play stacks, I mean, you're kind of asking for people to be mad at you, but that's the game. That's what you're doing. But when you're playing cards that just hate out one person because you know that one person's going to get mad or that one person's deck is going to get shut off, that's not fun.
Targeted land removal.
Targeted land removal, or if someone's playing tribal, just playing cards that shut off tribal, or, I mean, there's a difference here, because if someone plays a token deck and it's really strong, and you play Rakdos Charm, for example, or cards that, cards that care about the amount of creatures you have and dealing damage, or destroying all token creatures, it's kind of, it's playgroup dependent, but also, sometimes those cards are just good cards.
Yeah.
Rakdos Charm is just a good card. So I'm not going to blame you for it. But when it becomes to the point where basically my deck is built to just have one person's deck shut off, that's not only toxic, but it's also inefficient, because really you should be playing to play a multiplayer game, not just hurting one person.
And if you decide to go ahead and play one of those cards in your playgroup, really pay attention to people's reactions when you play it, because you can kind of tell just based on the looks and the groans of you playing a certain card that your playgroup probably doesn't like it, and you might want to think about taking it out in that case.
There are gonna be some cards that everyone just groans over no matter what. For example, like I mentioned, Overwhelming Splendor. I do not like Overwhelming Splendor because it's a one-sided card. It only hits one person. But cards like Rhystic Study will always get a groan. Smothering Tithe will always get a groan. What's another good one?
Armageddon
will always get a groan. However, in my opinion, they're generally either for your advantage or they're a symmetrical effect. So I'll groan over it, I'll moan over it, but it's a good card, and unless it's built in the absolute most degenerate way possible, I'm probably not going to tell someone to take it out of their deck. But if there is someone that is playing a card like that and it really is bothering your playgroup, you can confront the player and say, hey man, we like playing with you. We want to keep playing with you. Yeah. But if you have this card, it's not fun, and I don't want to waste my time not having fun.
I think to kind of summarize the behavior category, there are certain behaviors that are accepted in some playgroups and not accepted in others, other than don't be a jerk, which I think is kind of a universal law.
Don't be a jerk.
I think just kind of observe while you're playing Magic, just kind of what behaviors are okay and not okay in your play group. And if you don't feel that you can coexist with that, then find a different play group. But also try and cater your behavior to make sure that everyone's having a fun time.
Yeah, just keep an open mind. I mean, there's always going to be a player that maybe you invite to your play group and they really click with you really well, but there's a card that you play that they just don't like and it makes them upset. Keep an open mind and maybe put it in a different deck that you maybe don't play so often. That's another thing, is maybe don't play the same deck so often. Maybe switch it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So one other category that we would like to touch on is game interaction. And this kind of stems off of behavior a little bit, but focuses more on what I'm doing in game when decision making. Am I targeting somebody? And how do I react to things in game?
Yeah, it can get a little old when the same person is targeting you every game. They look at, for example, I look at Jason, I go, oh, I don't like the way he builds his decks. They're all just going to be super strong, and he's just going to win every game. So I'm going to target Jason this game, the next game, the game after that. It gets really old for not only them, but also the entire table, because maybe Jason is just playing a group hug deck, or Brian's Stout Arm.
And there's a difference between attacking someone because they're the actual threat at the table, like if someone's playing Narset, or attacking them just because you want to attack them. And I think that's kind of the difference between what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah, and like, for example, I built Brea with a very combo-heavy deck, I guess, and I didn't make her fully CEDH yet, but she's definitely borderline, if not low-tier CEDH right now. But if I pull up to my play group or to a table, I expect that people know what Brea does and that I'm going to be instantly targeted because that's how the deck is built, to win on turn 5. And it's kind of something that as a player you should recognize that if you're playing a powerful deck, that you should expect some form of targeting. Whereas if, let's say, I show up to a table with a Farika Enchantress deck, or like I mentioned earlier, Brian Stout Arm, or something just not very common, or something more casual. You shouldn't be targeted for that. You shouldn't be targeted as a player. No one has fun not playing their cards.
And I think on the flip side of that coin, if you're the player being targeted, you are not in a position to determine how people should think. If someone is attacking you and you are legitimately a threat, you're not allowed to say, why are you targeting me? That's not okay. Why are you doing that? It's not up to you to make decisions for people, but at the same time, people need to make rational decisions to make the game fun and healthy.
Yeah, and I think that also carries on to our next little section, which is verbal abuse. I think it's definitely... It'll happen.
Screw you.
Yeah, you'll play... Yeah, exactly. You'll play a card, and as opposed to just a groan, the table will just get mad. Someone will get mad at you. Someone will just say, oh, I hate you.
Why the heck did you blow up all my lands? This game is going to last 40 minutes now.
Yeah, this game sucks. And that is not healthy. I mean, it makes you feel bad for playing your cards.
Yeah.
It kind of decentivizes you from building your decks in a good way, because maybe the card you played is just a good card.
If it's going to win you the game, it's a good card.
Exactly. So that's another thing to be wary of. Make sure you kind of keep yourself accountable for your own actions. It is easy to get invested into a game. I hope you are invested in your games, because, I mean, it's kind of hard to play with someone who's not invested in the game. Yeah. But don't get so invested that one little thing just sets you off and you blow up at someone, because you don't want to hurt... It's a game. Ultimately, it's a game. You don't want to hurt your friendship with someone over a game.
And the kind of rule of thumb I go by when I think about it is if someone plays a card and I'm ready to, chew them out, I think about what would happen if I had played that card and if I were in that position. And if I don't want to feel bad, I don't want to make others feel bad.
And that is pretty important in not just Magic the Gathering, but in life. You don't want to... If you know something's going to really upset someone, generally you shouldn't do it. Because you know that you wouldn't enjoy it if someone did that to you. Another thing that we talked about on our list here is breaking deals with people that you've made deals with. Now, everyone's got their own version of politics.
Commander is an extremely political game, and oh my goodness, yes.
Everyone has their own way of negotiating. Some people just won't. However, there is a little bit of an issue when it comes to someone you know that it generally keeps their word. You make a really important deal with them, and then they just backstab you. That doesn't feel fun. And also, it makes the person untrustworthy. And it kind of puts a bounty on their head. And every game you play, you go, oh, that person doesn't keep their word. And on one hand, it is unhealthy. On the other hand, the playgroup just learns that you can't trust that person anymore.
And that's going to lead to items 1 and 2 that we just talked about, targeting and verbal abuse. If someone is breaking deals all the time, you're going to want to yell at that person. That person is annoying.
And then if they also are breaking deals to win the game, which ultimately you are, the ultimate goal of a game is to win, but not everyone plays to win, which is totally fine. That's casual Magic. Mm-hmm. But what'll happen is they all tie together. One will lead to the other. Verbal abuse can lead to breaking deals. Breaking deals can lead to someone targeting you, etc. And it kind of creates this cycle, this loop that's a little hard to break unless you really are conscious of it or you tackle it in your playgroup. And it kind of creates this almost a vacuum of just toxicity, and you don't want that in your playgroup.
And we're not saying you're not allowed to break deals. Like I have the reputation.
Oh, Jason has done this to me a lot.
I am the deal breaker of my playgroup, and I don't do it all the time. I really don't.
Jason's pretty good most of the time, but if he knows he can win the game...
If I know it's going to win me the game, I will absolutely break a deal. But this isn't Survivor. There's no point in lying just to lie. There needs to be kind of a reason behind it instead of just backstabbing everybody because you can and you like to see people get angry.
Now, if, for example, I have a card that might be the answer to something, and Jason asks me for a deal and says, do you have a way to deal with this? And I say, potentially, or maybe. That's not necessarily lying. That's more of just I can tell he's mad.
This happened last night.
Broodmoth combo for the win.
Oh, man. But, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that he got me. He got me good, and it was my mistake that cost me the game.
And that will happen, too. And sometimes it makes for a great story. Sometimes it makes for I learned my lesson, and I will just learn to choose differently next time. But beyond just one game, also keep in mind when it comes to all of these things that we listed, don't carry things on too far into the next game. I mean, if we're playing 3 games in a night, and I go, oh, well, Jason last game killed me with Cranko and all of his tokens. I don't want to lose to that again, and he is playing Cranko. Don't let that necessarily fully affect your choices, but, I mean, keep conscious of it.
You're allowed to.
You're allowed to, but don't go, oh, this guy comboed off last game, and that pissed me off. I'm only killing that person for the rest of the night. Don't go, oh, I'm pointing all my removal at this person, even if it's suboptimal just to piss them off because they won last game. It just isn't good.
So what you're saying is next time we play, I shouldn't attack you for what you did.
I mean, you gave me that win. To clarify, I was playing Teysa Karlov, and it was a very dire situation, and he asked me if he made a deal with me that I wouldn't touch his board or target him with anything. So a player stole my Teysa Karlov. He gave me a deal that he would be able to give me my Teysa Karlov back. And I said, okay, deal. And he played Scheming Symmetry, which I used to grab Luminous Broodmoth because I had a Solemnity on the board and an Altar of Dementia in hand, and I milled the entire table and won the game.
In my defense, it was 1:30 in the morning, but that's just how Commander works sometimes.
Yep.
Anyways, yeah, game interaction, just kind of make sure to just kind of stay calm and try and not aggravate anybody for the sake of aggravating people. It'll happen. You'll make someone mad, and sometimes it'll be your fault, sometimes it won't be, but you just kind of have to just stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Eat your fruits and vegetables.
It's true in these dark times right now that we're in.
But also, to tie it into the first topic, it ultimately comes down to just be a good person.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Our last category is deck building. So, for example, if I'm building a new deck for my playgroup, and I'm putting the exact same cards that I know piss everyone off in it, it's not a good idea. Don't do that. You want to make sure that your decks are built so that your playgroup has fun, but also keep in mind that you need to play with cards that are actually going to help you in the game. So I'm not going to not play enchantment or artifact removal just because I know it'll piss someone off, because objectively, you're going to need that. But you have to be careful of just abusing cards or playing. If someone plays Demonic Consultation and Thassa's Oracle in every single deck, it gets stale really quickly. It ends the game really quickly. No one gets to play their cards. It's not really all that fun. Now, if you're playing like a control deck or like Jason's Oloro, where it doesn't really have a win con that's very strong or very efficient, then yeah, I'd say throw it in.
I think when it comes to deck building, there's definitely two thought processes. I'm going to build a deck to win the game. Like, every time I'm going to build it as competitively as I can. Or I'm going to build a deck because it's going to be fun. And I think that both are very valid ways to build decks. However, in a casual setting, you need to make sure that if you are building a deck to be competitive, you don't build it competitively at the expense of others' fun. Because in a casual format, the goal is to have fun. It's not to win every game and be a champion. It's because I want to have fun and play Magic with my friends.
And when it comes down to it, it's just a communication thing. I mean, if I'm playing stacks or control, yeah, I'm going to be playing cards that make people salty, that are going to piss people off. But that's the goal of the deck. The goal is to say no, or to make people not be able to do anything. That's what the deck does. And it's just a matter of saying, hey guys, I'm playing this commander. And you guys will probably know, you guys being my playgroup, will probably know that I'm playing the stacks or the control deck. And in turn, it's like the Narset problem. If you get targeted because you're playing stacks, you kind of asked for it. I mean, there's no real way of saying, oh, I played cards that made you not play cards, so you're targeting me. That's not okay. It's more of a responsibility thing. Like, if I'm playing stacks and I don't want to just instantly die and then, I'm not going to complain that I got blown out of the water because I'm playing stacks. What I really should be doing is finding ways to make my deck do what it's supposed to do better without completely abusing my play group.
Exactly.
And I think that, like, for example, if Jason had a huge amount of winter orbs and he just decided he wanted to put a winter orb in every deck, yeah, it's an annoying card, but if he doesn't have a way to untap his own stuff, he's not abusing the effect. And then in that sense, he's playing it like a fair Magic card. And even in a deck that maybe doesn't have any use for a Winter Orb, but he just has it in there for fun, like if he played Scion of the Ur-Dragon with it, then I'm not going to have a problem with it. It's going to be annoying for sure. I'm going to get mad, and if it does become an issue, I should just tell him to take it out. I should just talk to him, and if he says no, then I'm just going to put more artifact and enchantment removal in my decks. But if I'm playing Derevi, and I'm not playing stacks, but I'm playing Derevi, and I put Winter Orb in, and I have every tutor in the game just to, every game, put Winter Orb, untap my stuff. That's not fun for anyone. Unless your deck is built to do that, because then people know what your game plan is, and they can go after you.
And if your deck is built to that, it'll probably win better than Winter Orb, and it'll be not as bad of a game.
Yeah, you won't feel as bad about... I wouldn't feel as bad losing to a stacks deck that stacked efficiently. But, I mean, if I'm playing against a Gruul combat deck, and then they just whip out a stacks piece, there's a difference between playing cards because they're efficient or playing cards because they're just good. I mean, you can play a card that's at its absolute max potential and it will be objectively stronger than every deck at the table. Or you can play it just as a card because you know it's a good card, and it works with your stuff, but you're not breaking the card. And I think that that's fair, and I don't personally have a problem with it. When you categorize something as a salty card, my personal definition is if I'm still upset about it after the game is over and, carrying on into a next game where I'm, not playing Magic anymore and I'm still going, man, I really hate Altar of the Brood and Jason's Krenko deck, then I think that's where we go back into the behavior category of, is it because I need to realize that I'm the only one upset by this card? Or is it because the card is actually making the game unfun for your playgroup?
Basically, rule of thumb when you're deck building is just try... I understand that there is a need to build to win the game as brutal as possible and just make the deck as powerful as you can. And that's what competitive is for. If I'm playing with a group of friends, my goal is to just have fun with my friends, eat some snacks, play some Magic. And yeah, it's fun if you win games, but it's not fun to make the game unfun for everyone else.
Unless you're playing stacks.
Don't play stacks.
Don't play stacks. But a good example of this is our friend Connor plays Mathis Curses. And in that deck, he asked me, and this is another thing, if you have a card you're unsure about, ask your playgroup. They're going to see the card. I mean, it's not like it's a secret. It might be a big secret, but ultimately they're going to end up seeing the card, and most likely you're not just going to take the card out after you play it once.
Exactly.
So he asked me if he could play Armageddon in his deck, if that would be too salty of a card to play. And personally, I don't think Mathis is all that strong of a deck as it is just a casual fun kind of deck. So I said sure. So he runs Armageddon in the deck. However, if I was playing a deck that's all about just cheating all my lands back on the board, or abusing Armageddon with bad example. I was gonna say Avacyn, but I mean it kind of needs that as a win condition because it's
Boros
not a
Charm.
But or Boros Charm. Then maybe it's not as fun to have everyone else's lands blow up. It might be fun for you, but it might ruin the night for everyone else, and you don't want to do that, especially if they had made the trip to come play Magic at your apartment or your dorm or your local game store or wherever. You don't want to make them feel like they wasted the trip by just super upsetting them with something that maybe you didn't have to do. Yeah.
So I guess to kind of summarize, when you're building decks, just consider both what you think is fun, because that's important too. You're allowed to do what you think is fun and what's going to make your game fun, but also just make sure that your group is having fun. And if there's anything that's kind of on the fence, I would recommend making a group chat or something with your playgroup and just kind of asking, hey guys, I'm thinking about putting Armageddon in my deck. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that'd be fair or not? Should I do it? And then maybe even go a level past that and maybe test it out. Just wait and see if it comes up in a game, and if it pisses everyone off, then maybe you take it out. And then you could put it in if you're playing competitive later.
So I guess what we're trying to say here is just be proactive with your playgroup. A couple ways you can do this are ask permission before playing cards that you think maybe will upset people. Work on how you build your decks so that they're fun for everyone. I mean, a really good one is Group Hug. Everyone has fun with Group Hug. But just don't be a jerk.
And don't be afraid to voice your opinion either. If something pisses you off, don't verbally abuse someone, but you're allowed to say, hey, I didn't really like that card you played last night. It really made it not fun when I had to sit for 2 hours or whatever. So don't be afraid. Definitely don't be afraid to voice your opinion.
Yeah, Jason, I don't like your Altar of the Brood and Krenko.
But no.
On the flip side, remember, this is a flexible game. Make sure that if someone is playing a card that does annoy you, I think that I enjoy when my friends play cards that are semi-frustrating, not objectively broken, right? But semi-frustrating, because what that does is it spurs creativity. It spurs me to go, okay, when I build this deck, I need to make sure that I have an answer for this.
How do I stop this?
Yeah, how do I stop this? counterspell. But if you're not playing blue, because Jason doesn't play blue,
Blue.
you know, you got to have an answer for things, and I don't think that there's a problem with that. I actually think it's healthy for the game, because what that does is it gets your brain going, and it helps you build better decks.
The thing I like to think about most when I'm kind of determining what to do in a game, out of a game, whether I'm building decks or not, is if I'm being a jerk and I'm being kind of a cereal jerk, I'm being a jerk all the time.
Yeah, he eats all the cereal.
Man, yeah. But if I'm being a jerk a lot to my playgroup, they can just choose not to invite me.
Yeah, and
as much as that would suck, could you blame them if I was doing all the things on this list?
And that relates to things outside of Magic. I mean, if you're hanging out with your friends and you've got one person that's just being a not very nice person, just being a jerk to everyone and everything, or to one person and everyone notices it, you might not invite them the next time. And not being included doesn't feel fun, but if you did it to yourself, you need to kind of reflect on, okay, maybe how can I change my actions? How can I change the way I interact? How can I change the way I built my deck? And that's ultimately what we were trying to get to here.
Magic, making friends one game at a time.
Or enemies.
And now it's time to pull from the knowledge pool. Tips to make Commander games more fun and more healthy. One thing to look at when deck building, which kind of ties back to what we talked about earlier, is EDHREC's SALT score. Nick, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So basically, EDHREC did a statistic where they had thousands of players vote on the top 100 saltiest cards in the game. And what is defined as a salty card is subjective. It's not an objective thing. It's definitely depends on who's playing it, how you see it played. But ultimately, it's what makes you upset when you see it hit the board. Now, Jason, would you like to give an example of a card from this SALT score?
Yes. So one of the top 5 saltiest cards is Vorniclex, Voice of Hunger. It is a 7/6 with trample for 8 mana. Whenever you tap a land for mana, you add an extra mana to your mana pool. And then whenever one of your opponents taps a land for mana, that land does not untap during its next untap step. And so this card has a SALT score of 2.69. And if you compile a deck into EDHREC, it'll take all the SALT scores of the cards that you put in and compile it and give your deck one SALT score. So you can kind of compare and contrast it. But the reason that Vorniclex is so salty, obviously, is because it leaves your opponents without any resources.
It's also a 7/6 with trample. So it's a big boy that's kind of hard to remove. I feel like all the Praetors are kind of like that, though.
Yeah.
But Vorniclex definitely more so because it's in green, and green can get it out faster.
Exactly.
Another example of a card from the list is not the list from Zendikar, but from the SALT score list, is Consecrated Sphinx. You've probably heard of this card. If you haven't, it's a 6 mana 4/6 flyer that says whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards.
Alert, auto-destroy.
It's pretty good. You kind of want to kill it on sight, but it's got a SALT score of 1.74. Personally, I don't really think it should be that high, but it is a really, really good card because every player has to draw a card at the beginning of their turn. And
I can't just not draw?
if you have 4 players and you play it, and you pass, you're immediately going to be drawing 2 cards, unless someone kills it on your end step.
Exactly.
And when it makes it back to you, you've drawn an additional 6 cards, which is crazy. That's very good.
That'll win, some games. So if you want to take a look, we'll put a link in the description for the top 100 saltiest cards of 2020, and we encourage you to maybe plug in some of your decks into EDHREC if possible, and check out how salty it might make your playgroup, and consider that when you're building it in paper. Before we pass the turn to you, please feel free to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And feel free to leave a comment. We would love to interact with our fans and talk to as many of you guys as you can. If you have any opinions on the subject that we talked about, feel free to leave a comment below, and we would love to talk to you. In addition, feel free to check out our podcast on Spotify. We'll put a link to that in the description of our YouTube video. And
if you're an audio listener, check out our YouTube. If you're a YouTube viewer, you don't have to, but we would appreciate you checking out the audio podcast if maybe you need something for your commute. Or if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button.
Pound it. And feel free to hit that notification bell too, so you'll know when the newest episode will come out.
Jason, do you have got any Magic related things going on in your life?
Just finishing Sisse. The rest of the deck's almost in and ready to play it at our next game night.
Nice.
What about you?
I'm building Akiri, the new Akiri from Zendikar Rising. I pulled a foil one over the weekend, and I've been looking for a Voltron deck, so I'm really excited to whip that one out for this. Probably the same game that I play against your Sisse.
Yay!
We'll see you next time on Untap
Upkeep.
Bye.
And now it's time for us to open some packs. Today we're both going to be opening Eldraine.
All right, let's see what we get. All right, do we want to show each other like last time, or do we just want to...
just on the rare, though.
Okay. All right. I won't shatter your eardrums this time.
Wait, oh, is it?
It's backwards, so...
Okay.
Okay, so no foils. So flip it over. It's 9 commons.
All right, 9 commons.
7, 8, 9.
And then uncommons. Let's see what I got. I got a Clover.
You got a Clover, huh?
Yeah.
I got a Circara, the Bold. All right, we ready for rares?
How many uncommons are there again?
3.
I've been done. All right.
3, 2, 1. Nice.
What'd I get?
You got Cauldron of Eternity.
Ooh, that's a good pull.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you got Witch's Vengeance, but you live some, you lose some. You got foil.
I got a foil Eye Collector.
Not a bad pack. Anyways, see you guys next time.